Okay, it's wonderful to be here. So the screen that you see here behind, normally I get called to talk about why these students are standing next to each other and not communicating. Can you see the irony there? All of them are on their phones. So as I came into this building, that's exactly what I noticed here as well. Everybody here were on their phones, but not talking to each other. Today, the topic is slightly different because I'm talking in a school. I am taking this human connection and trying to link this to learning. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. This is Srihari Prahalad. I'm a 20-year-old serial entrepreneur, and I choose to call 20-year-old because when I started my business, I believe that's when I was born, right? So let's look at some of the impact on learning outcomes. I'm going to choose a topic which is very close to my heart, which is about the solar system. Indulge me for the next 2 to 3 minutes, and I'll tell you how the human connection brought me to understand this topic better. All of us know about the solar system, right? That is a typical view of the solar system. Do you know how many things are wrong in this picture? There is the sun, we have all the planets, and all planets are going around the sun, right? Let me peel them layer by layer to tell you the number of things that are wrong in this picture. First of all, this picture has got lots of stars thrown in, right? And I'm going to prove to you that that picture is so wrong. Secondly, you realize that all of these planets around the sun are all seem to be going around the sun in designated paths, and each one of these paths seem to be aligned next to each other, the orbits, right? And I'm going to tell you how wrong that is. And each of these planets, this picture here shows you some idea about the magnitude of the size of each and every planet here. And I'm going to tell you how wrong even that picture is. Just to give you an idea before I go to the next slide, Jupiter here can hold up to 1,300 Earths inside of itself. Can you imagine that number? 1,300 Earths inside of Jupiter. And do you know how many Jupiters can go into the sun? Any guesses? Just a random guess? Any number? Anybody? Sorry? 10,000. Not really. About 1,000 Jupiters can go into the sun. Which means, do you know how many Earths can go into the sun? 1.3 million Earths make up the sun, right? Now, all of this is something I have read until I met an astrophysicist myself, and I spent some time with him. And this is the power of the human connection, right? When I met the astrophysicist, I realized the enormity and the size and the scale is something which is very difficult for each one of us to fathom. Let me throw some numbers here. If the sun were to be a 2-meter globe, a 2-meter globe is about this height. I'm not too tall, I'm short. Let's say here, right? The globe, the sun is 2 meters. And I put that sun right in the middle of the school here. Mercury would be 7 millimeters in diameter, which will fit inside this small piece on my forefinger. That will be the size of Mercury, 7 millimeters. And you know where will Mercury be going around? So right in the center, I have the school here, ISCS. Mercury's orbit is around the school. If this were the sun, where I'm standing right now, the sun were 2 meters, right? The yellow one is the orbit of Venus, and already we have crossed the Repton school. And you know how big Venus is 17 millimeters, which is slightly bigger than my forefinger. And then go to the Earth, which is 18 millimeters, and Earth is already going around the Repton school and going around everything else. And then if I go on to Mars, Mars is already going around Nadal Shiba as a whole. That's the orbit of Mars, right? And if I have to go beyond Mars, you see the point in the center? It is where Mars was, right? The brown line is Jupiter, followed by Saturn, and Uranus is the violet line. And the violet line is already beyond International City in Dubai, right? If the sun were where I'm standing now, the Jupiter and everything else will be beyond International City. And if I continue further, the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud is not even appearing here. The one outside is the Kuiper Belt, which is already going to Fly Dubai and all Varsan and all other areas. And if I go next, the Oort cloud is touching all the countries in and around, going around all the way, including the Red Sea. And guess where the first star is? If I were the sun, where would be the first star? Next to the sun. Any ideas? No idea? I tried to draw that to scale here. It is not enough for me to draw it to scale here, because the first star is going to be going around all the way, touching the United States and going all around the globe. If I were the sun for the size of 2 meters. Why am I bringing this to you, gentlemen? Is because when I connected with the astrophysicist, that is exactly the point I understood the enormity of the size of a solar system. The Earth is nothing but a speck. Not even a speck, not even dirt, right? When I sat down and spoke with the astrophysicist at length, it occurred to me the vastness, the emptiness of space is something that is very difficult for us to fathom. I would have never been able to get to this understanding had I not spent time with the person who's constantly researching this day in and day out. All of what I told you is available online. You can do ChatGPT, you can get these numbers out. You probably can try and visualize in your mind. But what you will fail to understand is the enormity, and that is something that can be given to you in the form of a human connection, provided you spend some time with a person with that knowledge, right? So a lot of things come because of human connection. Tacit knowledge, emotional intelligence, empathy. These are things that are not going to come by looking at online chats, right? Let's look at some of the online chats and what is missing, right? Many times when we chat, we hear this word, sure, whatever you say. When you hear this, what do you think? What comes to your mind? The first thing that comes to your mind is, this person is not listening to me. What is the meaning of whatever you say? Whatever you say has a negative connotation. But to the person on the other side of the chat, it might not be so. It might just be a normal conversation, right? If I move on, there are conversations where you potentially have constantly with people. You talk to them in the morning, you talk to them in the evening, you talk to them in the night. Guess what? When you meet them in person, you realize that person has no affiliation to you. They're only connecting with you online because they have some work to be done. Has that happened to you? It happens all the time. And this is the problem when you don't have human connection, right? Similarly, there are so many more biases, which I'm just going to skip through and go to my next slide. These biases come in different forms, particularly when it comes to learning. The more and more you learn things remotely, the human connection is lost. There are so many misunderstandings that can come into play when you don't necessarily go and sit in front of the person and try to get the knowledge, right? That human connection is so important, particularly in the world that we live today. And this has been seen in the past a number of times. We have seen different scientists come up with so many ideas, but because they were not heard, but because they were not sitting in front of each other, those ideas were lost to the world for a number of years, right? There are three famous ideas that I've brought out here. Gregor Mendel, Srinivasa Ramanujan for his mathematics, Gregor Mendel for the laws of inheritance, and Ignaz, who very simply said that you need to wash your hands in order to protect from germs. And he was not heard. That's because his papers that were published did not talk to the right audience. Similarly, there are so many events that have happened which could have been avoided if and only if we just had a face-to-face connection, rather than just doing things online, rather than being remotely available to each other, right? The 737 crashes that happened because of the MCAS system is a very classic example. This system was provided to the pilots in the form of a book, a manual. The pilots read the manual. They thought that was it. All that it required was a classroom connection to talk to every single pilot. They would have understood the importance of it. We didn't have to go through crashes with over 350 people to die to understand this, right? Moving on, in the world of curated realities, all of us live online. All of us live with likes. All of us live with pictures. Let's try and understand what you capture in pixels, they evaporate in proximity. How many times you've spoken with people and you've decided that you're going to meet them, and when you meet them, it has been a completely different experience. Because when you were talking to them, they were a different personality, but when you met them, they were totally different. I'm going to leave this talk with just a couple of photographs and show you who is this gentleman. Albert Einstein, thank you very much. What do you look at? What do you think of his personality when you look at this photo? Sorry? He's a scientist and a mad one and an absent-minded one. What else comes to your mind when you look at this picture? What about his behavior? Is there any behavior traits coming out? He looks grumpy. He looks messy. He looks distant. Because he's such a big scientist, what do you think would happen when you go and meet him? You would assume that he's going to be nerdy, right? He's going to talk about science. He's going to talk about a lot of things. Unfortunately, the first-hand accounts of people that have met him, they have described him as friendly. And not only friendly, he's also somebody who likes to crack a lot of jokes. Right? Moving on, this gentleman is Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, right? He looks stern, he looks awkward, he looks very strict. I'm sure in your school you have lots of teachers who look strict. But when you start talking to them, they seem to crack good jokes, they seem to have the right emotional intelligence, they seem to connect with you at the right levels. They seem to be good storytellers. And that's what the case of Lincoln also has been, right? Today we're doing a lot of these photographs. We need to be very, very careful when we connect. Those are the important points, right? Now coming back to what is the solution here, there seems to be a zone called the Goldilocks zone, which means there is not too much of online, there is not too much of offline. There is not 100% remote, there is not only classroom. There seems to be a zone where we need to be focused at. In everything in life, there is always moderation. And moderation seems to be the solution for everything. High BP, low BP, high sugar, less sugar, very emotional, less emotional, very angry, less angry. Everywhere you need moderation. And I'd like to end my talk to say, you don't need to go any further to look for human connections and learn. Those people are right here in this room, your teachers and your parents. Trust me, they have a lot to teach you as long as you ask the right questions and be in their presence and learn. Keep learning. Thank you very much.